Celine Vale found her future alpha behind the northern bonding hall with another woman's hands on his shirt. For 3 seconds she said nothing. The moon was high. The pine branches were still. The silver lamps behind the hall made Lucian Greymark look almost holy, which was insulting, because his collar was crooked and Maricel Thorne's fingers were still hooked in the open seam of his formal coat. Celine's giant black and rust Doberman stood beside her left leg with a basket handle in his mouth. Bruno had carried that basket for 6 whole minutes and looked proud of himself. He did not understand shame. Celine did. Lucian stepped away from Maricel. Too late. Celine, he said. That was all. No apology. No explanation. Just her name, as if she were a door he expected to open. Maricel's eyes filled with careful tears. Her pale gold hair slid over one shoulder. She pressed a hand to her mouth and whispered, "This is not what it looks like." Celine looked at Lucian's crooked collar. Then she looked at Maricel's fingers. "It looks very organized," Celine said. Lucian flinched. Bruno dropped the basket. The vials inside clicked together. Every one held a scent stabilizer Celine had prepared for the next day's bonding inspection. She had worked 2 nights on them. Lucian knew that. He had stood in her workroom, breathing easier because her hands knew how to calm a wolf's panic without humiliating him. Apparently, calm had not been enough. Lucian took 1 step toward her. "Let me speak." Celine crossed the clearing and slapped him. The sound cracked through the pines. Lucian's silver alpha clasp flew off his coat and landed somewhere in the ferns. Bruno saw Celine's hand move. Bruno understood one thing with the purity of a church bell. Celine had hit Lucian. Lucian was now a battlefield. The dog launched. Bruno no dash, a giant border war Doberman slammed into Lucian's chest and drove him backward into a pine. Lucian wheezed. Bruno put both front paws on his stomach and seized the hem of his formal coat in his teeth. Celine stared. Lucian tried to sit up. Bruno shoved him down again with one heavy paw. "Get him off me," Lucian snapped. Celine folded her arms. "He is processing the evidence." Maricel gave a soft cry and rushed forward. "Lucian, are you hurt?" Celine turned to her. Maricel stopped. A narrow thread of amber vapor glowed beneath the lace at her wrist. Celine knew that glow. She made it. Her stomach went cold. She caught Maricel's wrist and yanked the sleeve up. A tiny glass vial lay tied against the woman's skin with silver thread. Inside, a familiar scent signature shifted and breathed. Celine's scent. Not perfume. Not a cheap imitation. Her actual bonded trace, stolen from a locked cabinet. Lucian went still under Bruno. "What is that?" Maricel's tears finally looked real. Celine held the vial up in the moonlight. "Why are you wearing me?" Maricel opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Lucian's eyes moved from the vial to Maricel, and something like alarm entered his face. "Good. Let him be alarmed." "Answer," Celine said. Maricel's chin trembled. Lucian becomes tense before counsel writes. "Your scent steadies him. I only wanted to help." There it was. The useful part of Celine. Bottled, tied to another woman's wrist, carried into the woods like stolen medicine. Celine had thought Lucian came to her workroom because he trusted her. She had thought he leaned against her shelves because he liked the sound of her voice when she told him to stop pretending he had everything under control. She had been a room he rested in, not a woman he chose. Lucian tried again to sit. Bruno growled through the velvet. "I did not ask her to take that," Lucian said. "No," Celine answered. "You only used what it gave you." Maricel whispered, "You are being cruel." Celine smiled. Bruno's tail thumped once because he liked when Celine smiled. Celine shoved Maricel backward into the charm stand beside the tree. Bronze bells exploded into sound. Maricel cried out as if dignity had bones. Bruno released Lucian at once. He charged Maricel because Celine had touched her too. "Bruno, not the dress." Bruno got the dress. He seized the ivory hem and backed up with absolute confidence. Maricel spun in a frantic circle, shrieking while the dog dragged her skirt like a captured enemy banner. Lucian scrambled to his feet. "Enough!" Voices rose from the bonding hall. "Guards." Of course there were guards. Celine snatched the scent vial from Maricel's wrist and tucked it into her bodice. When Lucian moved toward her, she bent, swept through the ferns, and closed her fingers around the silver alpha clasp she had knocked from him. He saw the motion. So did she. Neither of them spoke. For the first time that night, Lucian looked afraid. Not for her. For himself. The first guard entered the clearing. Maricel clutched her torn skirt. She attacked me. She stole restricted scent from the stores. Celine looked at Lucien. He knew the truth. He knew exactly what Maricel had worn. His jaw flexed. His eyes begged her not to force him to choose. Then he chose anyway. Celine took restricted material, he said. The clearing went silent. Celine's chest hurt once. Hard. Then it stopped. A person could only take so much pain before pride came to stand in front of it. She looked at Bruno. We are leaving. Bruno released the dress. Celine meant they would retreat through the East Trail, lose the guards, and make Lucien regret every word by sunrise. Bruno heard, battlefield extraction. He shoved his enormous head between Celine's thighs from behind. What are you doing? He stood. Celine left the ground. One moment she was standing with some dignity left. The next she was folded over the back of her own dog, stomach pressed to warm muscle, knees flailing, one boot still on and the other somehow already gone. Bruno took this as praise. He ran. The first guard grabbed for Celine's sleeve and caught air. The second guard took her remaining boot directly in the face when it flew off her foot. Celine clutched Bruno's short fur with both hands. Not faster. That was not a command. Bruno ran faster. Behind them, Lucien shouted her name. For one traitorous second, her heart reacted. Then she remembered his hands on Maricel's waist. She remembered the vial. She remembered his voice accusing her while the truth sat hot against her ribs. She slapped Bruno's side. Left. Bruno went right. Your other left. He jumped a fallen log. Celine saw the ground disappear. She saw the moon. She saw every terrible decision she had ever made. They landed in a burst of pine needles. Bruno barked like a war hero. I am going to turn you into a rug, Celine gasped. His tail wagged. He heard you. He liked you. They blasted out of the pines and into the blackwood section of the forest, where old roots curled from the soil and the trees stood thick enough to hide old crimes. No one came here unless they were desperate, drunk, or cursed. Bruno was at least two of those things. A dark signal flared behind them. Someone had sent the border wardens after her. Celine twisted on Bruno's back and saw tracking smoke rise through the trees. Lucien had not chased her like a man who was sorry. He had chased her as if his reputation mattered more than the truth. Hide, Celine said. Bruno found a gap beneath two tangled roots. It was not a path. It was the hollow mouth of an ancient black pine. Do not you dare. Bruno dared. They hit the opening sideways. Celine's shoulder clipped bark. Her hair caught on a twig. Bruno squeezed through with the determination of a siege engine. Inside the hollow tree, something went thump. Bruno froze. Celine slid off his back and landed in dry leaves with no dignity at all. The thing went thump again. A black egg sat beneath the roots. Not a bird egg. Not a wolf egg, because that was nonsense no matter what winter-drunk guards claimed. This egg was the size of a grain barrel, black as polished stone, ribbed with dull gold. It smelled of smoke, frost, and something buried very deep. Celine crawled backward. Absolutely not. The egg rocked toward her. A small, muffled voice spoke from inside. Warm. Bruno sneezed. Celine stared at the egg. No. The egg rocked again. You. Come closer. I am already being hunted for one thing I did not steal. I am not adding a talking rock. The egg went still. Then, offended, it said, not rock. Voices crashed closer through the trees. The egg turned, listening. Bad wolves, it said. Celine narrowed her eyes. You know them? Smell them. Rotten silver. Burn oath. Bad. Bruno barked once in agreement, because bad was a word he knew. A warding flare hissed past the hollow and burned a line into the moss. The egg went silent. Not small silent. Predator silent. Gold light moved under the shell. A man's voice spoke from inside it, low enough to pull the air tight. Run. Bruno did not need more. He shoved his head under Celine again. Wait dash, up she went. Again. Celine grabbed the black egg by instinct as Bruno launched from the hollow. It should have been too heavy, but the moment she held it against her chest, it became manageable, as if it wanted her arms and no one else's. Bruno tore through the trees. The egg pressed against her ribs. Its small voice returned, pleased and muffled. Fast, loud horse. He is a dog, Celine snapped. Bruno barked. Bad dog, the egg said. Bruno took offense and ran through a hedge of thorns. Celine screamed. The egg laughed. It actually laughed. A cursed, talking, oversized black egg laughed while Celine Vale, former respectable scent worker and former future Luna, as of about 12 minutes ago, was carried barefoot through forbidden forest by a dog who believed speed solved law. At some point, the absurdity cracked through the pain. Celine started laughing too. Not because it was funny, because everything was ruined. Bruno had a pinecone stuck to one ear. The egg kept insulting roots. A tracking spell smoked behind them. If she did not laugh, she would break. Bruno shot down a deer trail, across a freezing stream, and up a hill toward an abandoned hunter's shed Celine had used once during a border storm. He hit the rotted door with his shoulder. The door surrendered. Woman, dog, egg, leaves, mud, and emotional damage tumbled inside. Celine lay on her back and stared at the cracked roof beams. Bruno sneezed beside her. The egg rolled against her hip. Again, it said. No. Later? No. Bruno crawled forward and shoved his huge head under her chin. That undid her. Not Lucian's hands on Maricel's waist. Not the stolen scent. Not the accusation. Bruno's warm, loyal face pressed into her throat, and Celine's hands went around his neck before she could stop them. The first sob came out ugly. Bruno froze in alarm, then began licking her cheek like tears were a medical emergency, and he was the only healer in the north. You did good, she choked into his fur. Terrible technique. But good. Bruno whined and pressed harder against her. She cried until her ribs hurt. She cried for the years she had spent making Lucian steady. She cried because he had looked at her after breaking her and still expected her to soften the fall. The egg sat beside them, silent. Then it rolled backward. Once. Twice. Across the floor. It bumped the door open and rolled outside into the cold. Its small voice floated back. Too loud. Celine laughed through a sob. Rude. The egg did not answer. It did not leave either. It settled outside the threshold, black shell gleaming under the moon, squarely between the shed and the trees. Guarding the door, Bruno lowered his head on Celine's lap. Just before sleep took her, the other voice came from beyond the door. The adult one. Cry while you can, little wolf, it said. When they find us, I will need you angry. Celine woke to a blade at Bruno's throat and 3 strangers kneeling around the black egg. She moved before fear finished forming. One hand closed around Bruno's collar. The other reached for a broken shovel handle beside the wall. The woman with the blade looked at her as if Celine were an insect holding a branch. She had black hair braided tight against her skull and pale eyes that did not blink. Behind her stood a broad man with dragon-scale armor under a travel cloak. His face was cut by exhaustion, and his hands trembled around the hilt of his sword. The third was younger, bleeding from one eyebrow, and staring at the egg like prayer had become a shape. Move away from the shell, the broad man said. Celine pulled Bruno back from the blade. Move your knife away from my dog. The woman's expression did not change. Your dog has been licking our king. Celine looked down. Bruno was licking the egg. The egg sounded deeply offended. Wet horse. Stop. Celine shut her eyes. Bruno. Bruno stopped licking and looked proud. The broad man went white. My king, he whispered. The woman lowered her blade by 1 inch. He speaks. Yes, Celine said. Mostly insults. The broad man snapped his gaze to her. You took him. No. He followed me. The king of the Black Flight does not follow unknown wolves. Celine stood up, barefoot and muddy, with a shovel handle in one hand and a dog leaning into her hip. Then your king has poor standards, because he rolled into my arms after my dog abducted me. The younger guard made a strangled noise. The woman stared. The egg went very still. The room changed. The air grew heavy. Heat moved out from the shell and curled around Celine's knees. A crack opened across the black surface. Smoke slipped out. A shadow rose behind her. Tall, broad, crowned by the outline of horns that were not fully there. One black-scaled hand appeared near her hip, not touching, but close enough that her body knew exactly where it was. The other hand covered the egg from inside the smoke. The adult voice filled the shed. She did not take me. The broad man dropped to one knee. The woman followed a breath later. The younger guard almost fell over himself. Celine should have felt relieved. She did not. Draxier's shadow leaned closer, and his mouth was near her ear. Only she heard the next words. I followed you. Her fingers tightened on the shovel handle. You are making this worse, she whispered. A low sound moved behind her. It took her one shaken second to realize the Black Dragon King was laughing. For them, he said. Not for you. The shell sealed again. The shadow vanished. The egg sat innocently at Celine's feet. Its small voice returned. Hungry. The woman on one knee looked as if her faith had been insulted by breakfast. The broad man bowed his head. I am Varek, first shield of the Black Flight. This is Nixra, Shadow Scout. We hid our king in the hollow tree after Lord Lucian's oathcraft broke his form. We returned and found him gone. Celine looked from Varek to the egg. Lucian did that. The egg said nothing. Varek's face hardened. Lucian used a dark oath worker. His envy gave the curse shape. He wanted the Dragon King reduced to something he could erase before the court learned what he had done. The shed went too quiet. Celine thought of Lucian looking afraid when she picked up his clasp. Not afraid of losing her. Afraid that two secrets had touched the same night. Nixra stood. Lucian's wardens will search the old roads first. We move before noon. We, Celine said. Varek looked at the egg. The egg rolled until it touched Celine's bare foot. Varek's jaw tightened. Apparently, he said, we. Aunt Ria's old dog yard sat behind a shuttered cooper's barn 2 miles from the road. Ria opened the door, saw Celine barefoot with a giant Doberman, 2 black-cloaked strangers, 1 bleeding guard, and a black egg wrapped in Celine's torn coat. She blinked once. Then she said, I told you Bruno was too much dog for a woman with wild luck. Celine stepped inside. Good morning to you too. Ria gave Bruno a biscuit. He took it like a decorated soldier accepting a medal. Varek refused to sit. Nixra inspected every window. The egg rolled onto a folded blanket near the hearth and said, Old female smells mean. Ria looked at Celine. Does your egg talk? He is not my egg. The egg rolled closer to her bootless foot. Warm liar. Ria stared at it for a long moment. Then she grabbed a kettle. Fine. I am too old for this before tea. They needed supplies before night. Food. Boots. A clean cloak. More scent neutralizer. Ria's stores were thin, and the wardens would soon watch every road. Celine should have stayed hidden. She did not walk into Greywash Crossing because she had missed market gossip or because she enjoyed danger. She mapped the trip on Ria's table first. 3 exits. 2 public wells. 1 alley narrow enough for Bruno to block with his body. She split the coin purse, hid the stolen scent vial under a false seam, and left a red thread marker at each turn so Nixra could follow without showing herself. Varek hated the plan. That made Celine trust it more. Soldiers preferred roads that looked honorable. Women who survived public shame learned to use doors that nobody respected. If I am not back before the bell, she told Ria, tell Varek to look for red thread, not footprints. Footprints can be lied about. My knots cannot. Ria gave her a flat look. You have had a very busy morning for someone with no boots. I am about to solve that. She went anyway. That was the problem with her. She could recognize danger perfectly well. She simply kept deciding it had no right to be so inconvenient. I can buy my own boots, she told Varek. You are being pursued. Then I will buy them quickly. Nixra looked at Bruno. The dog comes? Bruno barked. Celine clipped a rope lead to his collar. He is subtle when motivated. Bruno immediately knocked over a bucket with his tail. Ria grunted. Subtle as a cart crash. The market at Greywash Crossing was small, cold, and full of people who noticed too much. Celine kept her hood low. Bruno kept his head high. He had never understood secrecy, and likely never would. She bought boots first. Then oatcakes. Then a coil of red thread and 2 packets of salt for a tracking counterspell. She was reaching for a jar of wound salve when Bruno stiffened. 4 men entered the lane from the west. Lucian's men. Celine did not run. Running in a market made people look. She paid for the salve, took the jar, and turned down the alley behind the tanner's shop. Bruno trotted with her. A hand grabbed the rope lead. Bruno spun and barked. Celine hit the man's wrist with the jar. The jar shattered. Salve splattered over his sleeve. Bad choice, she said. 2 more men blocked the alley. The 4th raised a warding loop. It shimmered with calm magic, not sharp enough to injure, strong enough to hold. Bruno lunged. Celine shoved him behind her. No. The loop wrapped her wrist instead. Cold pressure snapped around her arm. Bruno went wild. He threw his weight against the nearest man. The man stumbled into a barrel. Fish spilled across the alley. Bruno skidded on them, recovered, and tried to bite the warding loop off Celine's sleeve. Run, she hissed. Bruno refused. A second loop flew toward him. Celine stepped into it. The magic closed around her shoulders. Bruno froze. Celine looked him in the eyes. Go. Find the egg. He knew go. He knew egg. He did not like either word without her. Bruno, she said, voice breaking only once. Go. The dog bolted. One man tried to follow. Celine hooked her new boot under the fish barrel and kicked. The barrel rolled into his knees. He went down with a curse, covered in silver carp. Celine smiled despite the warding loops. Tell Lucien I still have excellent aim. They took her to the North Lodge, not the main hall. Lucien was waiting in a private sitting room with drawn curtains, a table set for two, and fresh tea that made Celine want to throw the pot through a window. He stood too quickly when they brought her in. Relief cut across his face before he could hide it. That almost hurt more than anger would have. Leave us, Lucien said. The guards hesitated. Leave us. They shut the door. The lock clicked. Celine looked at it, then at him. If your apology needs a locked door, it is not an apology. Lucien's throat moved. I had to know you were safe. You sent men with warding loops. Because you ran with him. I ran with my dog. You ran with Draxier. There it was. The name made the room colder. Celine kept her face blank. You mean the egg? Lucien stepped closer. He was never just an egg. You knew. Not that he would follow you. That answer told her enough. Lucien dragged a hand through his hair. He looked exhausted. He looked undone. He looked like a man standing in the ruins of a house he had set on fire and feeling offended by the smoke. Celine, I made one mistake. She laughed once. His face tightened. You made it, she said. You defended it. Then you locked the door. I panicked. That is not a virtue. I missed you before you were gone. The words landed badly because she believed them. Lucien did miss her. She could see it in the way his eyes kept searching her face for the woman who had once softened when he looked tired. He missed her sharp voice in the morning. He missed the way she fixed what he broke. He missed walking into a room and knowing she would be there, steady as a wall behind him. That was not love enough. Not after what he had done. You did not miss me, she said. You missed having me near enough to clean up after you. Lucien crossed the room. She backed once and hit the edge of the table. His eyes dropped to the motion. Regret flashed across his face. He stopped. Good. He still had enough shame to stop. I do not want Maricel, he said. Not the way I want you. Then you should not have put your hands on her waist. He winced. I was weak. You were cruel. Weak is what people call cruelty when they want comfort. His jaw locked. For 1 second, the Lucien she had once known disappeared beneath the other one. The jealous one. The one who had looked at old songs about Draxier and hated a dead king for still sounding larger than him. You do not understand him, Lucien said. I understand you less. He is not a man you save. He is an old power that ruins whatever reaches for him. You reached for Black Oathcraft first. Lucien went still. So he had not expected her to know. Celine smiled. It was small and mean and deserved. Your secrets are badly behaved tonight. They keep following me home. Lucien looked toward the door as if the lock itself might defend him. I was going to send Maricel away, he said. I was going to fix this. You cannot fix a broken cup by putting my name on the pieces. I would have given you the north seat, the rooms, the keys, everything you wanted. Celine glanced past him, not at his face, but at the window latch behind his shoulder. Old brass. Poorly fitted. 3 turns, maybe 4, if the warding loop on her wrist did not tighten when she moved. Lucien mistook the glance for hesitation. That was useful. I know you, he said softly. You get angry. You leave. Then you come back when everyone else has made a mess. Celine's fingers brushed the edge of the tablecloth. Under it, a dropped dessert knife lay against the table leg. Not sharp enough to threaten anyone. Sharp enough to cut a curtain tie. Good. No, she said. I came back before because I thought home was worth cleaning. His face twisted. And now I am counting exits. The words landed between them. For the first time since she entered the room, Lucien understood that her silence had not been surrender. It had been measurement. A sound hit the hallway. Far away at first. A bark. Then another. Lucien turned. Celine's heart kicked. Bruno. At Ria's yard, Bruno arrived without Celine and caused immediate institutional collapse. He crashed through the gate, dragging a torn rope, Fish scales stuck to his chest, one oatcake somehow balanced on his back. Rhea stood in the yard with a broom. "Where is the girl?" Bruno barked 3 times. The egg rolled out from the barn doorway. "Loud horse lost warm one," it said. Bruno barreled to the egg. Varric reached for his sword. Nixra raised a knife. Rhea swung the broom at all of them. "Nobody stabs my dog in my yard." Bruno seized the edge of the egg in his jaws. The egg gave a sound of absolute royal outrage. "Do not put your mouth on a king." Bruno turned and ran. Varric shouted. Nixra cursed. Rhea watched the giant dog disappear down the road with the black dragon king in his mouth. Then she said, "Well, at least someone made a decision." Bruno followed Celine's scent through the market, across the lower ford, past 2 farms, and over a stone wall he could have gone around if he possessed humility. The egg bounced against his teeth the whole way. "Left," the egg snapped. Bruno went right. "Other left, you insult to horses." Bruno corrected course by running through a laundry line. A white sheet landed over his head. He kept running. "Blind horse," the egg said, voice muffled. Bruno shook himself. The sheet flew into a goat pen. The goats screamed. Bruno ran harder. Near the north lodge, the egg changed. Heat flooded the shell. Bruno slowed. The gold veins flared bright enough to paint the dirt. Inside the sitting room, Celine felt it before she heard it. A pull in her chest. A smoke scent under the door. Lucian stepped toward the window. "No." Outside, Bruno dropped the egg. Not gently. The black shell hit the dirt, rolled twice, and cracked from crown to base. Bruno froze. A hand came out first. Not small. Not soft. A man's hand, black-scaled at the wrist, slammed into the ground. Smoke rose. Gold eyes opened inside it. Bruno gave one terrified bark and jumped behind a rain barrel. The man who stood from the broken shell was taller than the doorway and angrier than the storm. Black hair fell loose around a face built for old crowns and bad decisions. Gold eyes fixed on the house. "Celine," he said. Bruno stopped hiding at once. He grabbed the edge of Draxier's black coat and tried to drag him forward. Draxier looked down. "You carried me in your mouth." Bruno sneezed. Draxier's jaw tightened. "We will discuss your crimes after I get her back." The door of the lodge did not open. It left the frame. Lucian spun as the door hit the floor behind him. Celine saw the man in the doorway and forgot to breathe. Tall, black-haired, gold-eyed, bare throat marked with faint black scale. A torn dark coat hung open across a chest that looked entirely unreasonable for anyone recently shaped like an egg. She took one step back. "Who are you?" His eyes narrowed. Then he spoke in the same low voice that had come from the shell. "The thing your dog carried here in his mouth." Celine's mouth fell open. "Egg. Dragon King." Her gaze dropped before she could stop it. His coat had split across the chest when he broke the shell. There was a lot of chest. An unfair amount of chest. Celine lifted one hand and pressed 2 fingers against him. Solid. Warm. Very real. "Oh," she said faintly. "That is big." Draxier looked down at her hand. Then at her face. "My title." Celine blinked. "Your chest." For the first time since the shell broke, the Black Dragon King forgot to look dangerous. Celine should have removed her hand. She did not. She gave the hard muscle under her fingers one more professional tap, because her mind had found a terrible place to hide and refused to come back. "That is not normal recovery from egghood," she said. Draxier looked at her hand again. Then his black brows lifted by the smallest amount. "Do you always verify miracles by touching them?" "Only the suspiciously large ones." His mouth curved. "Then I should warn you. I am larger when I am a dragon." Celine's hand went flat against his chest. The room stopped. Lucian stopped breathing behind her. Draxier's amusement faded into something lower, slower, and far less safe. "Careful," he said. His voice touched the place where her pulse had gone wild. Celine pulled her hand back at last, because she had not survived this much chaos just to lose a staring contest with a freshly hatched king. "I was checking if you were real," she said. "And annoyingly real." Bruno rushed in and shoved his head between them because he too wanted credit. Draxier closed his eyes for one controlled breath. Lucian made a sound behind her. It was not anger yet. It was worse. Hurt. Draxier's expression changed at once. The faint break in him sealed. He moved in front of Celine, not touching her, but close enough that she felt heat through the air. Lucian stared at him. "You were supposed to stay sealed." Draxier smiled without warmth. You were supposed to have better manners. We are both disappointed. Lucian's hands curled. She is my fiancé. Celine stepped from behind Draxier before he could answer. Former, she said. Lucian looked at her. Celine. That one word carried apology, possession, panic, and a kind of love too late to be useful. She did not let it move her. Draxier's hand came to her waist. Not claiming. Steadying. Lucian saw it. His face changed again. Draxier leaned closer to Celine's ear, his voice low enough for only her. If you ask me to step back, I will. Celine looked at Lucian, then at the broken lock, then down at Draxier's hand. She covered it with her own. Do not. The room turned sharp. Lucian whispered, You do not know him. Celine held his gaze. I recognized his voice before I recognized his face. That is more than you earned tonight. Draxier's fingers tightened once at her waist. Lucian looked as if she had struck him more cleanly than her hand had managed in the clearing. Draxier's gold eyes moved to the warding loops on the chair, then to the locked windows, then back to Lucian. She heard enough when you locked the door. Lucian's pride flared. I was trying to protect her. From the freedom to leave? Silence answered. Celine picked up the teapot from the table and poured the tea onto the floor. Lucian stared. That, she said, is for the private apology you staged like a dinner. Bruno barked approvingly. Draxier glanced at the dog. He thinks that was strategy. It was. Was it? Do not start with me. You were an egg 20 minutes ago. Something moved at Draxier's mouth. Not quite a smile. Close enough to be dangerous. They left through the front door because Draxier refused to use windows and Celine refused to be carried. Bruno tried to carry her anyway. He shoved his head toward her knees. No, Celine said. You have done enough transportation for one day. Bruno looked wounded. Draxier looked down at him. You carried a king in your mouth. Be grateful you still have teeth. Bruno sneezed on his boot. On the road back to Ria's yard, Draxier walked beside Celine in full human form, and she kept catching herself staring. It was humiliating. She had survived public betrayal, unlawful detention, and magical pursuit with most of her dignity intact. Then a man with black scale at his throat and a torn coat destroyed the rest by existing in moonlight. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You are looking at me again, he said. I am checking for cracks. In my chest? It was the nearest area. Varek and Nixera found them halfway to the dog yard. Varek stopped so abruptly the younger guard ran into his back. Nixera looked Draxier up and down, then dropped to one knee. My king. Draxier did not look away from Celine. Get up. We are not safe. Varek rose slowly. His eyes moved to Bruno. Bruno had tried to pick up a piece of broken shell and was chewing it with the expression of a dog testing a new toy. Varek made a strangled sound. Draxier looked at him. Do not ask. At Ria's yard, Celine cleaned the warding marks from her wrists while Draxier stood too close behind her chair. He had changed into a black coat that Varek claimed belonged to a courier. It did not look like a courier's coat on him. It looked like a warning that had learned buttons. Celine kept her eyes on the bowl of warm water. Draxier watched her hands. Do they hurt? No. That is a lie. That is a useful answer. He reached around her and caught her right wrist before she could hide the red line under the cloth. His grip was careful. That made it worse. Lucian had held doors shut. Draxier held a bruise as if it were evidence against the whole world. Celine's breath caught. Draxier's thumb passed once below the mark. I was late, he said. You were an egg being transported by a dog. I am not adding punctuality to your list of failures. His eyes lifted to hers. What is on the list? Insulting Bruno. Threatening my enemies before I finish talking. Having a chest that interrupts strategy. The last one is not a failure. It is for me. He bent closer. Would you like to inspect it again and be certain? Celine splashed water at him. Draxier did not move quickly enough to avoid it. Ria watched them both over the rim of her teacup. He used to be the egg? Yes, Celine said. And you touched his chest because you thought that would help. Celine did not look up. It was an assessment. Draxier's voice came from behind her. She assessed thoroughly. Celine kicked backward and hit his boot. He laughed softly. The sound went straight through her and settled somewhere inconvenient. Nixera spread the stolen scent vial, Lucian's clasp, and the broken shell fragment on Ria's table. We have enough to expose Maricel's theft, Nixera said. Not enough to bind Orvin to the Oathcraft. Draxier's face hardened. He will be near Lucian now. Men who loan curses always come to collect fear. Celine picked up the scent vial. The amber vapor inside pulsed when Draxier stepped closer. His eyes followed the movement. Your scent stirred the seal, he said. So everyone keeps telling me. It did more than wake me. It refused the lie they built around me. Celine looked up. That sounds poetic. I hate when things sound poetic and expensive. Draxier leaned down, one hand on the back of her chair. His mouth came near her ear. Then let me say it plainly. They used your trace to steady a weak alpha. I used it to find my way back to my own body. Her fingers tightened around the vial. His voice lowered. And now I know the difference. Bruno chose that moment to shove his head under Draxier's hand. Draxier looked down. Bruno wagged. Your horse demands tribute, Draxier said. Dog. He carried me like luggage. He is not innocent. Rhea slapped a heel of bread onto the table. Feed both kings before they start marking furniture. Celine choked on a laugh. Draxier's eyes shifted to her mouth. For 1 second, the room went very quiet. Then Bruno stole the bread. By dusk, Celine had a plan. Lucian would not expect her to return to the bonding hall. That was the first reason to go. Maricel would expect Celine to hide. That was the second. Orvin would expect Draxier to strike from shadow now that he had a body again. That was the third reason Celine refused to let him. This is my accusation, she said. Draxier stood across Rhea's table with his arms folded. He had found a better coat. It did not help. It still made him look like a threat dressed for court. They sealed me. They used me. They hunted you. They locked me in a room, and I poured tea on the floor. We all contributed. Varric stared at her as if she had just insulted a war banner. Draxier's mouth curved. You want the first cut. I want the truth in public before anyone can tidy it away. And if Lucian begs? The question should not have landed. It did. Celine thought of Lucian in the lodge, undone and desperate. She thought of the man who had once brought her cold coffee at midnight because she forgot to eat when she worked. She thought of the man who had let Maricel wear her scent. Then he begs, she said. Draxier watched her for a long moment. Good. That is all you have to say? No. He moved closer. But the rest is less useful. Celine should have stepped back. She did not. Draxier stopped in front of her, close enough that his coat brushed the edge of her sleeve. You're still shaking, he said. I am angry. I know. His hand lifted slowly. She did not stop him. 2 fingers touched the side of her throat, just beneath the jaw, where a line of mud still marked her skin. He wiped it away with a careful stroke. Her thoughts scattered. His thumb rested over her pulse. Her pulse betrayed her at once. Draxier's eyes sharpened. That is not fear. Celine swallowed. His thumb moved with it. Stop reading my pulse. Stop offering it. She lifted her chin because she refused to look afraid. That made his gaze drop to her mouth. Careful, Celine. Her name in his adult voice was worse than any touch. Why? Because I woke for your scent, he said. But I stayed awake for the way you looked at me when you should have run. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then Bruno pressed between them and sneezed directly on Draxier's boot. Celine jumped back. Draxier closed his eyes. Late, Celine said, breathless. Draxier looked at her. What? For once, he interrupted late. The bonding hall was full when Celine returned. That was the one thing Maricel and Orvin had done right for her. They had made the lie public, so the truth would be public too. Lucian stood near the high table, pale and silent. Maricel sat beside him in ivory, her torn hem hidden under a new layer of silk. Orvin stood behind them with the calm face of a holy man who had never done anything with clean hands. When Celine entered barefoot in borrowed boots, with Bruno at her left and Draxier at her right, the hall stopped breathing. Lucian looked first at Celine, then at Draxier. The pain on his face was real. So was the jealousy. Maricel whispered, impossible. Bruno barked once, because he liked the sound of impossible. Celine walked to the center circle. The old right stones glowed beneath her boots. Orvin stepped forward. This woman is under accusation. Good, Celine said. Then let the accusation answer evidence. Murmurs moved through the hall. She placed the stolen scent vial on the stone table. Then Lucian's silver alpha clasp. Then one black shell fragment. Lucian's eyes closed for half a second. He knew what each object meant. Celine turned to the hall. Last night, my scent was found tied to Maricel Thorne's wrist. Lucian accused me of taking restricted material. The clasp on this table was knocked from him before that accusation. The shell fragment belongs to King Draxiaver, who followed my scent from a hidden tree and broke his curse when I was held against my will. The hall erupted. Draxier did not move. His stillness pressed harder than any shout. Orvin raised his hand. A dramatic tale does not equal law. Celine looked at him. Then we use law. The scent truth right. Orvin's face changed by a fraction. There. Fear did have a smell. Lucian stepped toward her. Celine, do not. That was not command. It was warning. It was also too late. Celine uncorked the vial. Amber vapor rose. The old stones lit. Maricel gasped as the vapor curved toward her wrist, circling the place where the vial had been tied. A matching glow appeared beneath her skin, shaped like stolen thread. Voices rose. Maricel shook her head. Lucian needed calming. I only wanted to help him. Her eyes flicked once toward the Luna nomination table. Celine understood. Maricel had not only wanted Lucian's comfort. She had wanted proof that she could replace the woman whose work kept him steady. The vapor then moved to Lucian's clasp. The silver darkened. A mark appeared inside the metal. Not Celine's. Not Maricel's. Black oath graft. Orvin turned to leave. Nixra was already at the door. Varek stood at the other. Draxier finally moved. He stepped behind Celine, tall enough that the candlelight bent around him. His hand came over hers on the open vial. The entire hall saw it. Lucian saw it. Draxier did not look at him. He looked down at Celine. Do not hold the right alone. His fingers threaded through hers. Too intimate for a public hall. Too steady to refuse. Celine's breath caught. What happens if I let you in? His mouth lowered near her temple. Then they learn what it means when a dragon chooses the same woman twice. Her heart hit hard. Twice. His thumb pressed over her knuckles. Once when I followed your scent from the tree. Again now, while I know exactly who you are. Lucian made a broken sound. Celine did not look at him. She turned her hand under Draxier's and poured the vial into the right groove. Black gold light erupted across the floor. The oath mark in Lucian's clasp opened like a wound made of smoke. It showed Lucian standing in a chamber with Orvin months before, pride and envy burning clear on his face. It showed Orvin shaping a shell curse around a black dragon shadow. It showed Lucian flinching, then agreeing. The hall watched in stunned silence. Lucian whispered, I did not know it would hold him that way. Draxier's voice was flat. You knew enough. Lucian looked at Celine. I was jealous. I was stupid. I wanted one thing in my life to be larger than him. Then you left, and I realized I had thrown away the only person who made me feel like I could be larger than my fear. Celine let the words reach her. She owed herself that much. Then she let them pass. You do not get to discover my value after spending it, she said. Lucian's face collapsed. She placed his alpha clasp back on the table. I return your claim. I return your future. I return the name I was going to share with you. Let every pack in this hall witness it. I refuse Lucian Greymark. The right stones flashed white. The refusal took. Lucian staggered one step. No one touched him. Maricel began to cry again, but this time nobody moved to comfort her. Queen Regent Isolde, who had watched from the upper dais without speaking, rose at last. Her voice carried through the hall. Maricel Thorne is removed from shrine candidacy pending inquiry into stolen scent use. Lucian Greymark loses immediate claim to the Northern Alpha seat. His command seal, council vote, and border authority are removed until the inquiry is complete. Orvin will remain under guard until the old oath records are opened. Orvin's calm mask broke. That was satisfying. Not loud satisfaction. Clean satisfaction. Isolde's guards took his staff first. Not his hands. Not his pride. His staff. The symbol that had let him point at other people and call it law. Lucian watched the staff leave the hall, and something in him seemed to understand that regret did not repair authority. Maricel reached for him. He did not take her hand. Celine did not celebrate that. She had not come back to trade one woman's humiliation for another's. She had come back to make sure nobody could wear her life again and call it mercy. Celine stepped back from the right circle. Draxier's hand stayed at her lower back for one breath longer than necessary. She did not move away. Outside the hall, moonlight spread across the steps. The crowd remained inside, buzzing with ruined power and fresh truth. Celine stopped halfway down. Draxier stopped behind her, not beside her. Behind her. Close enough that she felt his heat before he spoke. Lucian is watching. Celine looked across the courtyard. Lucian stood under the archway, pale and silent. For 1 second, old pain moved through her. Then Draxier's hand touched her waist. Not claiming, asking. Celine looked down at his hand. Then she covered it with her own. Lucian saw. Draxier went still. Do not do that for him, he said. Celine turned. His face was inches above hers now. No shell. No smoke. No small voice. Only the black dragon king watching her like restraint was a blade held between his teeth. I am not, she said. His gaze dropped to her mouth. Then say it. Her throat tightened. Behind her, Lucian was still watching. Bruno was panting somewhere near the steps. The whole world waited. Celine lifted her chin. I choose this. Draxier's control broke for exactly 1 breath. He caught her face in 1 hand and kissed her. Not gently enough to be polite. Not hard enough to frighten. A kiss that felt like every locked door in him had opened at once. Celine grabbed the front of his coat. Draxier made a low sound against her mouth and pulled her closer by the waist. Then Bruno barked. Once. Loudly. Draxier froze. Celine laughed into his mouth. Bruno shoved his head between their knees with deep moral concern. Draxier lifted his head very slowly. Your horse objects. He is my dog. He has terrible timing. Celine touched his jaw, still breathless. No, she said. For once he was late. Bruno wagged as if he had planned the timing himself. Draxier looked down at the dog. You carried me in your mouth. You interrupted my victory. You stole bread. Bruno sat. Proud. Celine slipped her hand into Draxier's. He also saved me. Draxier's expression softened, but only where she could see. Then he lives. Bruno sneezed on his boot. Celine laughed again. This time, it did not crack around the edges. Across the courtyard, Lucian turned away. He had lost her. Not because Draxier had taken her, and not because magic had decided it. Because Celine had finally chosen a door he did not control. Draxier's fingers closed around hers. Where now, little wolf? She looked at the open road beyond the hall. At Bruno. At the black dragon king beside her. At the pieces of her old life finally behind her. Somewhere with boots that stay on, she said. Draxier glanced at her bare ankle. And doors that remain attached. Only if you behave. His smile was slow enough to be dangerous. I have recently hatched from a curse, been carried by a dog, and been touched in the chest by a woman who claimed it was an assessment. I make no promises. Celine's face warmed. Bruno barked happily. Together, they walked down the moonlit steps, leaving the hall of accusations behind them. For the first time all night, nobody was carrying Celine away. She was walking. And this time, every impossible thing followed because she chose to let it. Bonus Scene 1. The dog who carried a king 3 days after the public rite. Bruno received a formal summons to the Black Dragon Guard. Celine read the parchment twice because she was certain grief, exhaustion, or dragon politics had damaged her eyes. The parchment did not improve. It had a wax seal, 3 signatures, and the words field commendation written in Varric's severe hand. Bruno sat at her feet and chewed the corner of an old boot. You are being honored, Celine told him. Bruno sneezed. Draxier stood by the window of Ria's sitting room with his black hair loose around his shoulders, reading a second copy of the summons with the expression of a king inspecting an insult that had been dressed in ribbons. He carried me in his mouth, he said. Yes. To save me. He shook me near a goat pen. Still saving me. He called my dignity into question. Bruno cannot spell dignity. The dog wagged at his name. Varric arrived at noon in full guard armor, solemn enough for a funeral. Nyxera came behind him with a narrow leather collar band stamped in black gold. By order of King Draxier Varric began. Draxier looked over. I gave no order. Varric continued louder, and by unanimous recommendation of the Black Flight, the animal Bruno is granted provisional field rank. Celine pressed her lips together. Draxier's gold eyes narrowed. Provisional? Nyxera held up the band. We refused permanent rank until he stops licking royal objects. Bruno stood, sensing attention. He walked directly to Draxier, sat on his boot, and looked noble by accident. Celine lost the fight and laughed. Varric cleared his throat. His official designation will be Gatebreaker. Absolutely not, Draxier said. Bruno wagged harder. He did break a gate, Celine said. He broke a door. And a market fish barrel. Nixra added, and the shell. Draxier looked at all of them. The shell broke because I chose to emerge. Bruno barked once. The room accepted the dog's correction. Draxier closed his eyes. Celine took the collar band from Nixra and knelt in front of Bruno. You understand nothing about rank, she told him softly. You understand everything about showing up. Bruno licked her chin. Her laughter softened at the edges. Draxier watched from the window, his irritation fading into something warmer. When Bruno trotted to him again, collar gleaming, Draxier looked down. Gatebreaker, he said, as if the word injured him. Bruno sat. Proud. Draxier bent and fastened the last buckle himself. If you carry me in your mouth again, he said, I will demote you to furniture. Bruno licked his wrist. Celine leaned against the table, smiling. Careful, she said. He thinks that means promotion. Draxier looked at Bruno, then at Celine. Everything in my life has become less obedient since I followed you. You are welcome. His mouth curved. I did not say I objected. Bonus scene 2. The second assessment. Celine did not move into the Black Flight's eastern house because Draxier asked. She moved in because Isolde transferred the stolen scent inquiry there. Rhea complained that dragon guards ate too much bread, and Celine needed a room with a lock that opened from her side. Draxier gave her 3 keys. One for the outer gate, one for the records chamber, one for his private library. She held the 3rd key up. This is either trust or very poor judgment. Both can be true. You own classified curse records. You already stole a king by accident. The records are less dramatic. I did not steal you. No, he said. You attracted me, and then argued with the result. Celine pointed the key at him. I am starting with the records chamber before your ego blocks the door. She spent the afternoon working through Orvan's old ledgers. Draxier expected her to skim names. She did not. She built a chart on the floor with thread labels and little piles of ash flakes taken from the clasp. When Varek came to report, he stopped at the threshold. Is this an investigation or a nest? Both, Celine said. Do not step on April. April? The month, not a person. Draxier stood behind her chair and watched her connect 3 shrine payments to 1 false border treaty. His silence changed. Celine noticed without looking up. What? Lucian thought he needed your scent because it steadied him, Draxier said. He missed the larger problem. Which is? Your mind is more dangerous. Celine looked up at last. He was close enough that the candlelight caught the black in his hair and the gold in his eyes. The compliment landed somewhere deeper than it should have. It was not sweet. It was accurate. That made it worse. Do not say things like that when I am holding evidence, she said. Will you drop it? I might throw it. He leaned one hand on the back of her chair. At me? Depends how close you stand. He leaned closer. This close? Celine's pulse moved. Draxier noticed, because of course he did. Do not start reading me again, she warned. I am not reading. I am remembering. Remembering what? His gaze dropped to her hand, then to the front of his coat. Your first assessment. Her face warmed at once. That was a medical check. Was it? You had just hatched. And you were very thorough. Celine grabbed the nearest ledger and pressed it against his chest to push him back. It did not work. The ledger stopped against him. He did not. His hand came over hers, trapping the book between them. The contact should have been ridiculous. It was not. It pulled every sound out of the room. Draxier's black hair fell forward as he lowered his head. Still big? He asked. Celine forgot every date in April. Then Bruno shoved the library door open with his head, wearing his new collar and a stolen napkin. Draxier closed his eyes. Celine laughed so hard the ledger slipped. Bruno dropped the napkin at Draxier's feet. Draxier looked down. Gatebreaker, I am beginning to suspect you work for my self-control. Bruno wagged. Celine recovered the ledger and marked the payment chain with red thread. He works for snacks. Your self-control is incidental. Draxier looked back at her. His smile was slow. Then I will have to bribe him better. Bonus scene 3. The North Gate. Goodbye. Lucian came to the North Gate at sunset without guards. That was the first thing Celine noticed. The second was that he waited outside the threshold instead of sending a servant to demand entry. That mattered. Not enough to heal anything. Enough to show that shame had begun doing useful work. Draxier stood on the wall above the gate, black hair tied back, coat dark against the red sky. He did not speak. He did not need to. Bruno stood beside Celine with his field collar bright at his throat and one ear tilted toward Lucien like a judge with poor patience. Lucien looked thinner, less polished, more honest, which was inconvenient, because honesty after damage could still arrive late. He held a wooden box in both hands. "I found these in my study," he said. Celine did not move to take it. Lucien set the box on the low stone bench between them and stepped back. Inside were her old formula cards, her first cent stabilizer notes, 3 letters she had written and never sent during the months when he kept canceling dinners for council work. One silver hairpin she thought she had lost. Her throat tightened. Draxier shifted on the wall. Celine lifted one hand without looking up. A small signal. "Wait." He did. Lucien saw it. The pain crossed his face cleanly this time, without anger chasing it. "I used to think you stayed because I deserved it," he said. "Then I thought you left because he took you." Celine touched the edge of the formula cards. "And now I know you left because I made staying smaller than you were." That was the first apology that did not ask her to carry him. Celine let it stand. "What happens to you?" she asked. "Isolde sends me to the eastern border until the inquiry ends. No command seal. No council vote. No shrine access. And Maricel?" She chose a comfortable lie. "It became smaller when nobody clapped for it." Celine closed the box. "Do not make her your excuse." Lucien nodded once. "I know." Silence held them for a moment. Then Bruno stepped forward and placed one enormous paw on the box. Lucien looked down. "Hello, Bruno." Bruno sneezed. Celine said, "He remembers the dress incident." "I remember the dress incident." "Good." Lucien's mouth moved almost into a smile, then failed. "I will not ask you to forgive me tonight." "Good again." He looked past her, up at the wall. Draxier watched with the stillness of old fire. Lucien looked back at Celine. "Does he make you feel safe?" Celine considered the question. Draxier did not make her feel safe in the simple way people meant when they wanted locked doors and quiet rooms. He made danger face outward. He made her feel seen while she was angry, muddy, clever, petty, soft, and loud. He did not require her to become smaller, so he could be calm. "He makes room," she said. Lucien closed his eyes for a second. "Then I hope you keep taking it." He turned to leave. Bruno picked up the wooden box before Celine could stop him and trotted through the gate with it, nearly knocking Lucien's knee on the way. Lucien stepped aside quickly. Some lessons did stay learned. Draxier came down from the wall after Lucien disappeared into the road dust. He stopped beside Celine, not touching until she leaned back into him. Only then did his arm settle around her waist. "He gave you back pieces," he said. "Yes. Do you want to keep them?" Celine watched Bruno carry the box proudly toward the house, sideways, because he had no sense of width. "I want to keep what was mine before him," she said. "Not him." Draxier's hand tightened once. "Good." She looked up. "That was very kingly of you." "I was restraining myself." "From what?" "Correcting his breathing." Celine laughed. Draxier bent and pressed his mouth to the side of her head. It was not a public claim. It was quiet. For once, Bruno did not interrupt. He was too busy trying to get the box through a door that was clearly too narrow. "Celine is sight. We should help him." Draxier watched the dog turn the box, fail, turn it back, and wag with increasing confidence. "In a moment," he said. His arms stayed around her. Celine let it. The road beyond the gate emptied. The house behind them glowed warm. For the first time, the space between those two things belonged to her. If you like this story, subscribe please.